Welcome everyone, I guess we are live, to another fun Linux live stream here, although not the most successful in terms of financing open source with YouTube live streaming. Still didn't give up and want to do some things anyway. I made here a questionnaire, so one thing I wanted to do is set standard compressed firmware stuff, firmware for SCSI controllers in the SG Octane or adapter USB to exchange and all this other fun YouTube stuff. Do we even stream? I think we are. Welcome everyone. So I made this questionnaire, would you like to see Linux kernel stuff here, like set standard compressed firmware, and surprisingly, why do we not see here an bar should... okay, this color is just sucking. Anyway, 73% said, hey, Linux, a little bit to my surprise, I thought Linux is already done thing, but anyway, so let's show you how this looks. If you wanted to do this, we have done this mostly in the init.rd, which was too large for all the P3 stuff, all the previous videos. So this video is also for the P3 and SG Octane. So the thing on the SG Octane was also even the old-fashioned SCSI stuff from the 90s needed firmware, and historically this was simply compiled into the Linux kernel drivers that looked like that you had the firmware here somewhere, like struct firmware, whatever, and it was simply embedded in the C file or another file. And since like a decade or so, or 15 years, we have this firmware loading stuff to load the firmware, not because it's certainly nice to have this firmware separated, and that nowadays lives in user lib firmware. Here also, in the meantime, yeah, how much firmware do we have nowadays? Yeah, 500 megabyte with all the wireless and GPU stuff. And so the issue is with the firmware that you might need some of this firmware for booting, even nowadays after 2 decades on the SG Octane for the, what was it, even Q whatever 1080 or so, QL 1080 or something of that sort. QL 1080, let's see what exactly this, something of that sort we could theoretically. Anyway, check the, let's check that. Maybe we even see this in the diff archive for MIPS64. Architecture, come on, MIPS64, a bit hot here. No, we don't see that because package Linux, and then we have here like IP27. Also not, can I have too many working directories. IP27. Anyway, doesn't really matter too much. Config. But yeah, QLogic 1040 and 1280 was relatively close. Anyway, so the issue with that, the Linux, so with the firmware uncompressed as it usually is here, it's 500 megabytes, so you certainly don't want to have a 500 megabyte init.rd. Even let's say, okay, it compresses. If it compresses down to 200 megabyte, it's still a little bit large of an init.rd. And so this is why an MK init.rd would only include the firmware for the, and would only include the modules that might be used for booting, and then only those firmware that is needed by this more bootable kernel modules and devices. The issue with that is even that was quite large, and for the P3 and not as much on the SG Octane. On the SG Octane we are more limited of bootable memory there on this low memory allocation stuff, which I painfully debugged a couple of nights already as well. Although the Octane has more memory. Yeah, ironically, the Octane has, most Octanes, SG Octanes have more memory than a P3. On the P3 we are constrained with the memory of the system, and so even if the init.rd is 20 megabyte and the, or 27 megabyte, and if it deflates to 100 megabyte initRD sizes in 2020, then that with the runtime and initRD maybe Tempfs, half of the system memory, this is already quite constrained. So so for this we enabled Xset, so there is Xset compression. Also in my kernel, in my microkernel, I would do this differently. So it's, in my opinion, a little bit silly that there is custom code for kernel compression, of which we right now, actually we should also maybe disable a couple of those, because we will probably never need this. And in my kernel I would like have there one, because there's also custom codes then for initRD compression, then there is custom code for crypto, not to mention squashfs. It's a little bit hilarious in my opinion that there's like 4 or 5, if not 6 or 7, counting BadgerFS and stuff, wrappers and APIs for Zstd. Anyway, one thing that with all this wrappers and API glue, one thing that was not there is, you see amazing code stuff, like a little bit, in my opinion, not amazing that everything needs its own glue stuff here, because the firmware compression stuff previously only supported Xset, and this bugged me a little bit because I don't like to have code there just like custom Xset compression, when otherwise nowadays I prefer Zstd for initRD and stuff. It's for the most part pretty nice compressing and very fast decompression standard. So it wasn't there that, and yeah, spoiler alert, I implemented that today, and that looks like that. So I have this here already somewhere. I didn't live stream it because it took like the whole afternoon. So if unsuccessful Woman distribution YouTuber guys like myself, if you write here some tiny little kernel code, then yeah, one afternoon and nobody thanks you, and certainly you can't get rich with that unless you grow a YouTube channel. So we committed this in 3 commits, git log. So we git cloned here the Linux kernel and based on Linus Torvalds word. So I started with renaming, also git diff, not so, probably this is slightly wrong, that doesn't probably give us, anyway. I started renaming this, although whatever, can we git diff? Probably I need to Google another day of git diff that versus maybe that works, git diff that to that. So I started, and also reverse, because so I started renaming this just to be nice, because previously this was named just compressed, and it's compressed Xset. So this was my first commit, just a tiny little bit renaming, just basically prefixing all of this stuff with _ Xset. Then this of course only took a minute or two, and so renamed, and then even that, then basing upon that, took like 3 commits. Basically initial Zstd compressed firmware support. I only implemented one part, because there are 2 parts. So basing, how would you usually do this? So a little bit tutorial here. So this code is not that much, it's just like here 2 pages of this oversized YouTube font stuff here, and there are 2 functions for that, for Xset. So they have Xset single for a single shot decompression with 1 pre-allocated buffer, which is a little bit simpler, and then they have a multi-page iteration stuff of multi-page streaming here, which is a little bit more error prone, and what the heck are they even doing there? And so the first commit of those, I just implemented initial Zstd compression. So I only implemented this 1 short firmware decompress Zstd single short decompression onto onto, it's like into, in my opinion, into a buffer, not onto, but whatever, a little bit wording. So how does it work? So we have a workspace for Zstd. So of course the code is entirely different, because all the compression libraries have a little bit of different API. So we need a workspace, we need to allocate this with some special kernel large malloc stuff. Initialize this decompression context. A little bit of print k, which we can remove now. A little bit of error handling, like if we can't allocate this Zstd compression thing then out of memory while allocating Zstd decompression context. Find frame compression size. It's like, yeah, you just read the freaking manual and copy and paste some other people's codes in the kernel, because we have already 3 or 4 or 5 instances of the set standard API glue. Handle, yeah, find frame compression size, and then if error, then go to out, because yeah, good old-fashioned 90s code can always use some go-tos because it's Linux kernel error handling style. No exception, no other niceties. It's just C, and according to YouTube comments, I don't know what I'm doing, and I certainly can't program C. But hey, can handle goto, so certainly master C very fine. So then decompress the stuff in one context and handle the error, and if error, then go to out. And if we read this, then firmware private size equals return stuff of it wasn't an error. Deallocate large freezes workspace and returns this error. And the issue is only, so this is the first implementation thing, which you can also see in this commit. And yeah, didn't really work. So I barely need firmware stuff here. So most of the stuff is somewhat firmware free. And the only thing that I sometimes need firmware is also, yeah, I should actually, all the fun stuff I maintain here for a decade or two, Adaptic SCSI stuff, super expensive, probably not sold for a decade. It was probably $100 to $200 fancy USB 2 to SCSI stuff, the fun stuff you need. Anyway, I maintain this patch, probably I should eventually send this upstream. And yeah, guess what? This doesn't use this single page special case thing. So yeah, back to the drawing board, also implementing set standard pages. This is a little bit more tricky, and of course, yeah, if it's more tricky, the benefits of one address base, single address base, monolithic kernel stuff, of course it oopses on the first try, because we are professionals, and yeah, just like Linus Torvalds and other professionals, yeah, of course it oopses. You see here some set standard decompression stuff of mine. Error code 4 is whatever, it's like, yeah, more data, whatever. 4K page size, whatever. So this actually works, but then kernel null pointer dereference address, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, back to the drawing board. A little bit of guru meditation and debugging in terms of print K, and a couple of reboots later, and now it works. I can also show you that here of yeah, now the stuff works. Set standard pages, a little bit of yeah, USB exchange probe start. So my own code here that I'm dragging around for a decade or two, but yeah, share, like, and subscribe if I should. Yeah, there you see the thing. Recurring theme here. It took like 4, maybe 5 hours, to be honest, just implementing set standard compressed firmware stuff. Certainly not the best bang for the buck here for my $3 YouTube AdSense revenue, but just to document here this open source stuff of you want to maintain some nice stuff, and nobody thanks you. This the Debian people call you unsuccessful one-man distribution guy, and the YouTube comments call you you can't write C. What the freaking heck are you even talking here? Anyway, so yeah, now this stuff works nicely, and actually the only thing that didn't work here, what I overlooked is, and I can go over this code in a second, is this nice function firmware map page buffer, because so this the only fix between oopsing on a null dereference and this code working is this. And the reason is that so for this multiple buffers, of course everything is more complex, and the difference is in one buffer shot we just have one buffer in, one buffer out, and set standard decompresses stuff. And the issue is that we don't know how large the buffer is, and we have multiple pages, because yeah, this is also why I, in my more modern stuff, so probably share, like, and subscribe for that, in my hopefully soon microkernel and multi-server microkernel stuff, all the stuff would be in user space, so you would just call lib set standard and ideally some nice compression API wrapper for that, and like some C++ stuff of, hey, decompress me this buffer without all this virtual memory paging and page granular handling stuff. Because so for this stuff, also apparently pressed Q there a second ago. So for this stuff there is this is paged buffs, which like paged buffer, which we didn't set before. This is also basically just copied here from the Zstd stuff, because certainly not coming up with this fine stuff myself. And actually we could maybe, you know what, let's move this a little bit down to make this code a little bit more in line with the other code here that probably might be slightly nicer. And the way this works is now everything is much more complex. We have here multiple pages to decompress, and the code is similar, and the comments and code just copy and pasted from other kernel sections that do similar stuff. And so we first need to start here the set standard decompressor with the in buffer, and so the set standard in source buffer is the input buffer position, starts with 0, the size is the input size, and then we need to determine the set standard window size, which might be up to 8 megabyte, and allocate this. So set standard get frame params, which starts parsing the compressed buffer. There you see IT is difficult and doing, it's totally amazing, right? Doing all this complex stuff in a one address space, single address space, one large code of amazing stuff, right? And amazing stuff, and until it oopses. And which again, recurring theme can happen with all the buffer overflows and all your input handling network. Recurring theme not only in my own code, but certainly if you go to the kernel org and just take a look at the last changelog. And so why do I say this? Null pointer dereferences. Out of bounds, apparently not in the, maybe not in the last, but certainly in up. Also this was small, yeah, it was only because it was a hotfix release. You see this was already small because random can't do random in 2020. But any other kernel recurring reminder here, not only my unsuccessful one-man afternoon, but yeah, prevent possible out of bounds array, and out of bounds with I index, actually bounds, out of bounds of, and dereference. So yeah, am I the only one who dereferences null pointer? It's like obviously not net lan, null pointer xfrm and net x25 and AMD GPU. So yeah, recurring reminder why this is a recurring theme here. Anyway, so what is so complex in this? So we then finally allocate this, when we know the window size, allocate this large malloc workspace size for the set standard compressor or decompressor. And then we start decompressing. For that we mark this firmware, private firmware handling wrapper stuff as is page buffer, which otherwise it isn't. And then for each chunk of this decompression stuff, we decompress with one page at a time, because that is what the Linux kernel likes, because fragmented memory and not large allocations, as seen in the P3 videos, where we already get an Ethernet allocation XKB buffer failures, because can never have enough memory. So we, if this input buffer, so if we run out of data, if the input position is equal to the input size, then the set compressed data is truncated, and always error handling right in your one address space. Yeah, the usual kernel bugs if you don't do stuff like this, and yeah, infinite loop or other out of bounds stuff in your Linux kernel. It's like, yeah, obviously error handling, boundary checking, and then allocates an output buffer. So for each output, so now we have a very large buffer, and for each of those outputs we need to grow this firmware core managed firmware page buffer thing here. So there's a firmware grow page buffer helper for that, obviously, which I shamelessly copied from the Zstd code path there of here, grow page, obviously similar to that. And why it certainly would be nice if we would have one streaming decompressor API in the Linux kernel and use it all over the place and not open code all this stuff again and again and again and again. But anyway, so grow this linked list of pages, decompress into the newly allocated page here, similar to the Zstd case there. Then for this, by the way, we need to map this. So grow this stuff, then also page firmware k maps this page in the virtual address space stuff output position 0, size 1 page size, decompresses stream output to input to output, and then K unmaps the page. Also here, recurring niceties of doing all this low-level stuff. In my opinion, all this stuff, drivers, compression, file system, so much nicer in user space, not all this alien Linux kernel specific virtual address space mapping stuff. But anyway, share, like, and subscribe for also more stuff of this fun stuff to come. Then error handling, because otherwise kernel bug, and that's certainly the last thing we want in single address space. Monolithic kernel, and then increment the firmware private sizing by the output buffer size, and repeat until we don't have a compression error, decompressed everything. And then last but not least, yeah, my last bug of certainly edit, compile, plenty of types and errors, and this includes rinse and repeat a couple of afternoon later, and one kernel oops later. That obviously was that one. So what this is doing is apparently mapping here this page buffer, which is what I overlooked and why it oopsed earlier. So that's certainly what you would want to have. And last but not least, that is everything we needed to have a nice set standard compressed firmware loading. Now we can finally also, yeah, this is not all. So one afternoon I've done this, tested this. Now it's working, at least for this one use case of adapting to USB to Exchange. Also, do I actually compile? Also, yeah, Python, because Python. Compiling obviously a new P3 build, because new glibc, new Linux kernel, can never have enough of this failing cross-compile stuff. Ninja and Mason. Let's compile PowerPC 6432 for all the P3 fun of it. And last but not least, to send this upstream. So do I even did I commit this? So to send this upstream, I think I actually we moved this, we updated this. So it's just removing of one print K. So to send this upstream, I certainly need to squash this commit a little bit, and tiny code cleanup, removed print test print K. But honestly, this will not even survive, because I will obviously not send this to Linus of all Torvalds with this 5 commits for set and compressed firmware loading. So we will most likely, we will squash this stuff together later with a beer or something, and send this there to whoever is a driver core or whatever maintainer for our Linux kernel credits. Until then, we scripts clean up, suspend that, background that, and do here one last cleanup of package base Linux of I tested this here obviously in our nice little tiny and some say the best, but I might be biased, source distribution that is T2, is only that used already set standard compressed init for over 2 years, and now has set standard compressed firmware loading. And one thing I wanted to remove here is this print K. For print K simple, that would be that, and print K pages. So in the fine, we hand added each patches here only on this live stream, because we feel lucky. This chunk is now 4 less. That would make this stuff 87, because we certainly love hand editing patches, in case you didn't know that already, but the recurring viewers might know that already. So this is all it takes to implement a fine new little feature here in the Linux kernel. But according to the YouTube comments here on our growing, and thanks for subscribing, channel, it's so funny that people who most likely can't even write much C try to troll me here with like YOLO whatever, you're even talking, you even don't know C. But what do I know? 20 years of professional C programming certainly can't of YOLO whatever opinions, stupid opinions of think twice, YOLO, you certainly can't do C. But anyway, So we are test compiling that. We still have, most likely I will optimize our unsuccessful one-man distribution stuff here of var admlog and disabling a couple of code snippets that I personally will anyway. Also, you know what, this beeping gets on my nerves. That comes when you plug in the PSO speaker there and you find little ASUS workstation board. Let's disable a couple of kernel options because you can never have a small enough trusted code base. That would be 5, 7, 14 of all bug fixing stuff. So for one thing, I really wonder that all of this stuff, actually this is only half, so enabled is only set standard. Okay, that is good. And we have init rd, that would be rd for some, so config, I think all of them are on, and we honestly don't need all of them. Really wonder why they are on. Anyway, so we can certainly disable those just for the tiny little architecture shared. Are we still compiling? Of course, what did I not touch? Also, this is Meson, not Menson, but yeah, package names nobody can remember, at least not me. So grab rd whatever for init rd. So Linux common, that would be of rd whatever, and let's disable all the other stuff because now YOLO, not going to, oh, wait a second, is it even, oh, that was here. So that would be z not set, z not set, z not set, z not set, and z also not set, because now set standard for me it is, only using the best and approved by ourselves foreground. Oh, this is Emacs. We can also, obviously, where would that be? That would be that one. Close that. And 273 drop frames. Let's build that again. And let's, so glib. That would be clean, because we obviously do so much stuff that we have plenty of working copies of 300s of uncommitted changes all over the place. Let's see. Questions in the audience. Mpfr has a new version 4.1.0, but does it also build with GCC? Update Mpfr 4.1.0, also best without. Sometimes this stuff doesn't build then with GCC, which is somewhat annoying. Thanks for that. So yeah, how are you doing all today? I'm certainly doing quite fine with my set standard C knowledge here. Too long didn't something good choice for Arch 64. You mean T2? Certainly T2 is the best choice for everything. Might need to bring your bootloader or if you're wrapping whatever stuff. Set standard decompression in action. Can we see your? Sure, we're feeling lucky. So plugging, that in here, that would be see this in action. If the live stream ends in a snap, then that clears this dmask, plug it in. That would be here, this blinken light. So this thing only works and blinks light if the firmware is loaded. So that would be also USB port, not USB-C. So here that loads firmware and then blinks. And then we have here probe start and stuff, and now it already cached because cache. Actually, I wanted to disable the cache because probably but this loaded as you see there on the dmask. And so then we also change our init.rd stuff because then we obviously don't want to compress xset anymore. So that would be 5, 7, 14 of what do we have now? I hope all this stuff is disabled because I don't want it. And that is disabled, amazing stuff. And then set standard, I think I prepared this already. Let's commit package base mk init rd, and that is already set standard 19 rm here instead of that. That looks good, but let's first always pro tip here also. I think we have a little bit of Why do we have a little bit of... maybe that is... Why does TCP wrapper fail? No implicit dub. What? Right, this is actually glibc update. So yeah, 2020 only live here on this channel. A little bit with... Not really sure why this USB stuff is so laggy now, but now don't need this live thumbnail of me anyway. Not the top model, so yeah, YOLO, whatever. Yeah, so 2020 we could theoretically live fix this, but maybe in a second. Let's, what would that be? We just, let's mine RF, build PowerPC 6432 of Mpfr. What was not? Job 1 Mpfr. Oh, this wasn't built yet. Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, 2020 new glibc version, and of course some stuff doesn't build because I always need to jiggle there. Was it even jungle there? Jungle there. I think jungle is jungle the right word? Only live on this channel. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Also green proceed, whatever. Oh no, it's not jungle. Something of that. Juggle. I was close anyway. So juggle some headers around because it is so 2020, also 2000. Also, why does it not load? Whatever. Do we even still live stream? This might just be some recurring tracing of temp or something. Oh no, we failed. Why did we fail? Mpfr. Oh, wait a second. What? No, we have. What have we done now? Don't tell me we have. Nah. Live destroyed our compiler. Thankfully, we have a snapshot from. Why? How did I manage that though? Didn't really remember. Darn! I forgot the capital R. Oops. So copy from the last snapshot. That is why you should better have as snapshot some backups, and we have here Chrome build of user lib 64 lib Mpfr. Only live here on this channel. User copy this stuff over of. That I guess, yeah, copy it. GCC, does it work again? Yes, it works. So, so much to always doing this stuff live on this channel. Why is, by the way, download Mpfr? Did it not download or? Also doesn't download for some reason. Yeah. Internet in 2020. Anyway, we wanted to do something else. We wanted to commit this set standard thing. Now that it test build, darn, test build in theory, so that would be svn-add in our amazing source distribution of Linux set standard firmware. Then obviously set standard compressed firmware loading, because just obviously whatever signed off by whatever that is nowadays. Also, why do I not have okay, then no Axel today in this terminal because no UTF-8. Anyway, but it goes with Git there to Linus of all Torvalds anyway. So let's see, what else do we have here? Set standard firmware. Do we have a diff stutter? Let's see, what else do we have laying around there? Package base Linux of outstanding updates. So yeah. Anyway, edit or set standard loading. Commit that. And then we can, that was a pro tip that I wanted to say some 10 minutes ago before I became distracted. mk-initRD, always commit in the order of how the stuff works. So certainly the initRD stuff change doesn't work without the kernel commit first. So obviously the base support stuff of kernel support for that, and then the other glue stuff of actually using that here for the firmware instead of Zstd. And yeah, updated our mkinit rd to set standard compress rd firmware. Okay, whatever. That's enough there. So yeah, that's basically it. All that should be needed for that. Next week could test this. So yeah, this stuff doesn't download. Why not Mpfr? Somehow, yeah, Mpfr current. Thank you much. Of maybe that is why it's not loading. Of whatever is wrong with that website. Maybe they also Mpfr migrated that because it is a thing in 2020. That's the stuff. Mpfr constantly either breaks, does not break. It's like, yeah, whatever. It apparently doesn't load right now because, nah. Maybe it's here if you're lucky. 410. Apparently it is there. Then let's switch this to a mirror that might not be as often. Oh, wait a second. It was somehow not the right thing. Then let's download that, maybe. And test build it because it's what we like to do. Misspelled signed off by, that might be, but thanks for that. This would anyway be here in the Git stuff to the Linux people. First need to squash that, which we could probably do also live. So that would be also, let's test the cross build also. That would be stage 0. So git squash would be also always was it head tilde, where's my tilde on this freaking, was it like that? It was a git, so many commands. Squash of, was it amend, commit, rewriting history of, nah. Commit, amend, maybe rebase, maybe it was changing multiple commit message of, maybe that. Let's see, not the Git repository, that is true. Yeah. But this is also when my customers always laugh, why does it cost so much money? It's like, yeah, you know what, it takes some hours to sit with this stuff, right? First reading documentation, then prototyping, then testing, then even writing freaking commit messages, then cleaning the stuff up, sending it upstream, and 8 hours easily gone, just in case we're wondering how long this fun stuff takes. Also, aircon broke, I converted with a towel. I now have, after a broken decade-old monoblock garbage, which I can't recommend now, I have a towel over the aircon because 35 freaking degrees in the office. Vaporizing aircon for what it's worth, certainly not buying a new one anyway. So for some freaking aircon modification, certainly better than, so yeah, maybe sometime soon, eventually, until last year, we might do here some fun solar panel and 48 volt DC split thing here on this building aircon, but maybe not this year. So if we want to see freaking self-reliance and sustainable off-grid stuff here, even on this headquarter in Berlin, then don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, because certainly not buying a new failing monoblock aircon, can't recommend, was piece of garbage. Penguin, whatever, and can't recommend. The stuff was loud and wasn't cooling much. And anyway, so implemented multi-page set standard compressed firmware, fixed new set standard. So yeah, basically squashing all of this. So now the question was pick use. So what was this use commit but meld into the previous? So this what was. I hope it worked like that. Let's see. Let's see what we got now in the history. That was initial set standard compressed, so rename. Maybe it looks like it might have worked diff. Not doing this every day because, yeah. So maybe also, oops, with subversion you would see it like that, but with git, of course you need like that. So enable, so that was actually, this is not All right, okay, maybe, did I not? This might not be the most amazing to have it in that, but whatever. Compress set standard, because before that commit was a rename. It might be tiny little bit near. Maybe the Linux kernel gods might complain about that. Decompress helper here for whatever that was, of pages of something, set standard. This is the stuff wiring that here of the config. Obviously xset, so firmware loader compress set standard. Then try that. Here's that fine cone block. Looks quite good. Next, I only need to hunt some maintainer. Certainly do some more testing. So let's also 0, because how many drop frames? 273 here. Not too many drop frames today. A little bit warmish here. Hope it rains. I have the feeling it didn't rain yet. Anyway, what else do we have here? Misspelled, good rebase, you got to pick one. Anyway, so yeah, testing that. That is still, yeah, stuff is getting large. Previous videos, GCC is getting slower, Linux kernel is getting larger. And in case you were wondering, yes, it's probably next also needs a digital thermometer. I have the feeling it's, even with this vaporizing air conversion, still over 30 freaking centigrade or Celsius, whatever you want to call that, or certainly not, or in royal units, it's freaking too effing hot here, in terms of, no idea what that is in royal Fahrenheit. Anyway, so yeah, cross-compiling here of Mpfr. We can also multitask and prepare to Mpfr that for one something, but certainly rebase. You had error message there. Did it rebase? Yes, it did rebase. It was just some VI garbage of probably NVI of better of BDB, whatever page size garbage of that comes from. I actually don't use NVI anyways. I only squashed this 3 commits together, because certainly nobody needs this half, because it was initially it was the set standard single page stuff, then set standard multi-page stuff that was broken because this oops, and then also in terms of oops of probably, where do we, hello, don't we have it there, Discord. Obviously of, no, why is this download so large? I just want to open it in the browser, because obviously of that oops, and so this certainly doesn't make sense to send it to the Linux kernel in for freaking commits that nobody needs, so I squashed this stuff together, so it's just one set standard commit, how you would be doing it for a clean kernel stuff. So the cross compiler apparently built with this Mpfr. Man, is it freaking hot. So normally, yeah, a little bit of vaporizing stuff. Another fun fact, I glued in the spring some UV protection film on the windows. It doesn't help much, so that is, I didn't make a YouTube video about that. If you want to see more lifestyle stuff, Louis Rossmann style of gluing UV, I made some lifestyle stuff. There will also be some more lifestyle stuff coming. I didn't make one for the UV foil. It was partly fail. The first UV foil I glued there, because the balcony area stuff there, kind of winter garden loggia thing, is just like 1 meter 20 or something. Not too much room to navigate, and then I glued this alone. So the first UV stuff, quite some wrinkles. These 3 windows. The second better. This is why professional equipment for that. And you can also use it for your vaporizing monoblock conversion stuff. And yeah, so UV transparent film stuff there, not the most recommendable. I didn't notice much, maybe a tiny little bit, but between Death Valley hot and Death Valley hot -1 centigrade, like, or 1 Kelvin, that's like, yeah, YOLO, whatever. So UV foil, it was also pretty expensive, probably 100 freaking euros or something of that, plus minus some cents. It's not worth it. What I did yesterday, because yesterday it was already 36 freaking centigrades outside, so probably 40 freaking centigrades in this Death Valley, we call this headquarter. fourth floor under the roof, last floor here, south side of there. It's like, yeah, it's, you see it. Anyway, probably solar cells and split thing, 48 volt split split aircon conversion sometime soon. So what I did yesterday, life hack for nearly for free, just cost you a couple of cents. In the middle of the windows, I glued one 30 centimeter stripe of kitchen aluminum foil for reflecting some more sunlight out. That might do so basically removing the sun stuff here by maybe 20%, and maybe I just glue a little bit of more aluminum foil. So free tips for the €100, well, through the UV film, like 7, 10, 15% UV reflection stuff you can look through, so yeah, but you barely notice it. So certainly aluminum foil nearly for free, doesn't cost you $100, and certainly nearly 99, well, at least maybe 90-ish% efficient of reflecting the stuff out. Anyway, just anyway, while we wait here for the stuff to compile. Anyway, so yeah, for the set standard compression stuff, it doesn't save us much. It saves us the exit. So yeah, this is probably something I need to hunt next of this top level dear temp. I have no idea where this is coming from. That happens nowadays. Sometimes need to track that of all the tiny little glitches I constantly track here. But this compression size we will not notice as much. For me, it's just like not having this exit stuff in the kernel, which we actually could check if this now var of etc kconf, also maybe boot kconf of 5.7, also obviously waiting for 8.1 for the update, because certainly not updating for a 0-point release. And so yeah, now we can check if we have here this exit in the kernel, which I don't really want. So this, all the stuff is off. We only have set standard. So xset and set standard compressors similar. Actually, I think I checked. I think set standard was slightly smaller with -19. And yeah, this is off. Squash FS, yeah, YOLO, whatever. Maybe we would want set standard there. So yeah, this decoder is modular. Now previously this was built in. Most likely we can actually fact check that with 7.7 probably. That should probably be xset. That probably this is also decompress xset and deck. So this is, yeah, so this was built in. Actually there's a second one, because you can never have too many kernel config stuff. Certainly also something I would, this is also not here. So yeah, this apparently works. So maybe the code size reduction in the kernel slightly larger than what we saved in terms of init.rd, but any saving and code duplication, and yeah, don't need compressors that I don't want to use. So apparently GCC maybe still builds with this new Mpfr. So Mpfr, thanks for that. Live tested on this channel, committed there, whatever is up with mpfr.org. But doesn't surprise me. 2020, the state of the internet, no surprise there. But yeah, that is the glory of the TCP wrapper. Do we, you know what, probably have Tempfs on, so to debug. The only problem is people usually don't watch these long live streams. That is the problem of just continuing to fix a little bit stuff here. Config ppc 6432 config of Tempfs, and of course it was on for the. Also probably sometime soon I will make an option to Tempfs fail, then copy from Tempfs to non-Tempfs, just to make my debugging easier, not to have constantly switch this. Also theoretically, is there a new release of, oh, wait a second, what is it? This we probably committed. Let's check if TCP wrappers, but probably not. What is it? 476, whatever. So this is exec VP and implicit. So this is probably implicit. Is it? Not sure if this is the. We will make opt of this. Where was that in road user include Is this an error? Whatever. Is this an error? Is it an error? Or did they maybe fully remove this old stuff that nobody wanted? This an error too. I have here already maybe this print system error message. What? And this an error. What's this? What the heck was this old-fashioned stuff? Even global error, something external. The external this an error. The external this an error and conform to Zstd. What? Does this even work? What I patched here in PowerPC pdisk of code update. Not sure if will it work? What was it even doing? But yeah, first they add the stuff and then they remove it. In my opinion, total. Here's even defined this an error too. Oh no, this is an error. Provide the declaration for this an error, but bits this error list of external this an error. I have no idea if that works similarly, but we could certainly YOLO that and wait for the next release. Hope for the best. No idea if that is functionally equivalent, but %m of error. No, we have already then. Just yes, by the way, extern. What is it even this? What's this error list defined? If not defined, it already what? It already has the error list defined. So maybe this is some wrong detection of. Interesting. We can already remove this and certainly TCP wrappers conf error list do we have here? This is here some config. Okay, then let's just remove this and call it a day, I guess. Anyway, all the tiny bits and pieces that you need to, what also doesn't work, why? What is this now, libwrap of undefined reference to this error list, yeah, but did we not? Or does it is this error list defined? It's still in there. So much to quickly removing Mpfr and then that is what I mean with maybe having an option there to keep this Mpfr. What is in the, maybe it is extra sleep, maybe it's still, did it still build with that? Lock, auspriv, something. But well, builds anyway. Uniref, but this is strange. If not defined, wait a second, if not defined, wait, we need to patch this a little bit more. If not defined, then extern, yeah, except that we don't have it. It's just, okay, fine. We need that together with define this and arrow to, I don't know, and how does it use this and arrow? Arrow no, what? KP percent this and arrow? What the freaking heck is it even doing there? Unknown error if what? If error number? If error no less than this error and what? This error list, okay, but this error list this is hilarious. But this alone will not even fix it because it what was it, underscore something? I think they might have removed this in glibc because, yeah, breaking decade-old code is always fun in the Linux ecosystem. Recurring theme here. Okay, this error list is there, but is it still in the latest glibc build purposes 6432 user include? No, it isn't. Nope. Something like, what was it? Printer system error, this would be like P error, does that still exist, or maybe we, but yeah, you see, I mean, why the freaking external compiler that copies that, would there be something of, darn, okay, we could Google that, darn it. Probably someone must have a proper patch for that already. Welcome everyone there, probably, yeah, CP. This and our rated link warnings of 2001, no, thank you very much, deprecated use, string error. Man string error. In string error of character, string error, buffer length, of yeah, something of that sort. Yeah, did I probably already delete that apparently? But yeah, pro tip, use loose like not BSD stuff. It's like basically we don't really, means theoretically it's like don't need any of this stuff, and also this like I don't know, something of that sort also, I guess. And so they want to copy on BP because you need to name stuff like x86 register names apparently. String error. So that would be string error character. String error, just return it. Yeah, theoretically we could buffer length. Does it even have, like, what does it even? String copy? Nah, because string, yeah, super super safe string handling, obviously, because what is buffer over underrun and sizes and bounds and anyway, fix file diff, that could maybe work, string copy of that maybe. eval of fix file diff, that would be no this TCP wrappers of no that stuff. And anyway, let's see how far we're getting. Welcome address 10 uclipc logs, what string unknown error or something. Do we have this already? That sounds good. Thanks for double checking that. So let's turn up our aircon here off. Pressing aircon for what it's worth. That was TCP wrappers, right? 10, oops, not CD of string copy, string error, no, unknown error. Yo, oh, doesn't look too bad, right? We could certainly factor that out of there. Thanks for that. Probably should read stuff more often. And amazing that people in the audience check out our unsuccessful bomber distribution and stuff. So theoretically, the only question is, does it still apply? Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. String copy, so theoretically you could do, okay, this is actually relatively, yeah, let's factor it out of there just for the sake of it. Cut X there, then remove it here. Hello, can you also have? No, probably pressed that wrong. Then, how many lines are that? That are like 60 lines to delete. And then hand editing patches, because what do we have here else? So this is 0. We basically 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 4 less, so should be 11. Wait a second, does it even, wait a second. Oh, this is, wait a second, this is deleting that. Wait a second, wait a second, this was a one-liner. That was a little bit string error. Wait a second, this is doing this twice. Is this even nice code? Does it even work? String error, string, whatever. Maybe it is medium, not the prettiest code, but we can anyway factor it out. Maybe is what do we do here? If error number, if error no, then string error no, unknown error. Whatever, probably, maybe that is somewhat usable. Let's test compile that. Job 1, TCP wrappers. Always not the worst idea to, not the worst idea to clean up conditional patches. So that compiled. Let's check how many. That's probably it for today. Also want to go home. Dinner, family, changing diapers, cuddling with the baby, and so commit TCP wrapper. That would be wrappers of that sort. So that compiled previously. So. I guess uclipc fix TCP wrappers for latest glibc glibc. This an error and this error list removal. Anyway, don't really need to mention that we cleaned up this glibc patch, whited it because nah, whatever. So this was this error list, so that probably error list and probably should be fine. Here only left on this channel. So the root, what you're saying is that we work as a root, yes. Because also, yeah, maybe theoretically we could, this is all thing because we use change root sandbox and we need that for change root, and also with all the packages, if we would remove the compilation as root, then so compiling as normal user, theoretically we could do that, except yeah, okay, for the compilation we don't really need the change root sandbox. I was just thinking the other day, because this root triggers a couple of people, theoretically we could like compile as user, normal user, even like certainly you still would need some means, like if you to create tarballs for your distribution, you could, because the issue is if you install, then all the files are installed with user ID, your local user. That certainly is not amazing for distribution where the files should be installed as root. We could do this with tar, like tar set owner permission something stuff, certainly, and other tricks like this, but this is why this is just keep it stupid simple, decade-old code and works fine, and yeah, just whatever, YOLO, but there are certainly means to make this better, including compiling like the big compile job as a normal user, so that your compile job cannot clobber your files and do two. Certainly, if you compile as your local user, compiling stuff could still send all your local home users, home directory to your cloud and to the evil Mpfr stuff and whoever wants to be evil. But from that point of view, if you build a distribution, then yeah, you probably can maybe trust your local VM or whatever. But yeah, theoretically, whatever. But maybe it's not that much worse. It wasn't the most worse for a decade to come. Anyway, so yeah, a couple of thousand drop frame, 0.8%, not too bad today for a bit live stream of this failing DOCSIS cable garbage stuff. Did some stuff, including when we talk about this and all this, it takes an hour or two longer. We are live streaming also 1 hour 13, that probably is enough. We probably did some cool things today, including implementing set standard compressed firmware loading, updated some stuff, fixed TCP dump, also not that but that. 6432, 100, quite some to go. Yeah, that comes from compiling your theoretically. Yeah, maybe we open the beer in the live stream and beer and Linux and. Anyway, don't forget to share, like and subscribe. I think that's mostly for today, although many of these packages compile relatively fast-ish. Much more, so probably what I do earlier, as you see here, the load on the amazing epic thread wrapping AMD Ryzen is only the parallel make stuff is compiling nicely. Parallel, all the serial configure stuff is not. So a much more versatile, instead of changing, compile is non-root, which is YOLO, whatever works for me. That's fine, whatever. The more people it triggers, the more people share, like and subscribe and comment, probably, maybe. But much more productive for me is, and also do the productive stuff that if people like, yeah, you compiling is root, triggers me is like, yeah, YOLO, whatever. Do the productive stuff. The productive stuff, much more productive stuff for me would be parallelizing the compilation of these packages, because many of these packages like probably libxv and libxxf86dga, like direct graphic access or whatever that was, and so some of the stuff like make dependent stuff. So many of these packages can be scheduled and built in parallel, so that would make much more use of epic thread ripping Ryzen and failing Intel and more parallel RISC-V and AArch64 stuff. Instructions and architecture, previous videos, and so that is something on my agenda for also over a decade already. And we talked about this already in 2005 in NT2, because it works, don't touch the running system, good enough for me. But now with, and back in the day 2005, the only thing with many threads, so I had only dual core, and that was my G5 previous video, where I of course now have the non-Apple shipping SKU of 2.5 gigahertz, which probably we could also use another live stream. The P3 2 cores, the G5 2 cores, I never actually spent money on a server like dual socket server board. I only had normal x86 stuff. The first multiprocessor x86 stuff, probably my MSI Mega book of dual core. I guess it was dual core. I hope it was dual core. Actually, maybe it wasn't. I had the first revision. Maybe even that wasn't dual core of portable AMD Silicon. So maybe the first multiprocessor x86 thing was even an Intel, and for that the most massive parallel PC thing was probably computer thing was probably Sun Microsystems T1000. Previous videos there of Sun Ultraspark fame, when Sun of all companies loaned such a thing that was, I think, 8 cores of cool Sun Ultraspark cool threads, not very speculative and stuff, and SMT or something, so not the highest performance. Yeah, cool threads cool threads, but not very high performance. And there you could already see that this massive parallel stuff of 8 threads or whatever that was, maybe it was it even showing 32 threads because it was 4 times SMT or something. Anyway, details. Back in the day on this kind of silicon, I learned already in 2006 or whenever that was, that with that many threads, this kind of non-parallelized configure on like 8 thread 1.8 or whatever the gigahertz Ultraspark performance stuff, not amazing when your configure takes forever and then only the make stuff is parallel. So probably sometime soon we use our cached dependency stuff and try to parallelize building packages. For example, many of this like xenit, xk, bcomp, xkill, like basically all of this stuff can easily be parallelized, so that theoretically probably we do this soon, like because it is really important nowadays with this, and maybe like not only Ryzen but like maybe even real epic and real thread ripping performance coming sometime soon to this channel. Latest already today, but latest then, so don't forget to like and subscribe for parallelizing all the package builds. That certainly could easily speed up the whole T2 build by a factor of maybe not 32 but maybe 20, depending on, of course there are some big builds that need to be serialized, like certainly everything depends on bin utils and then GCC, so yeah, can't parallelize everything but quite some stuff, and so maybe a speed up of between 10 and 20 could probably be easily achieved. And then building a full this is cross-compiling this right now PowerPC 64, right, for the PS3 previous videos and next videos. Right now probably takes 2 hours or something of that sort. Yeah, live streaming 1 hour 20. Yeah, probably 2 hours or something on the 3950X, and then by 20, this would be 2 hours divided by 20 but engineers like Star Trek kind of overestimating stuff of 2 hours divided by 20 times speed up multiplied by 60 minutes an hour. So what built in this probably, okay, so much to it's probably not building in 6 minutes, so I doubt that's so much to maybe 12 minutes. That's so much to fact checking your guesstimates. Pro tip when you make estimates, maybe proof of concept, calculate that. Anyway, I would already be happy if it comes down to 30 minutes, which might probably be more realistic thing of big stuff of parallelized building, LLVM, Clang, GCC, bin utils, and Mesa, so they're already massively parallel. So this, half an hour from 2 hours would be a speed up of 4. So much to fact checking your own guesstimates by order of magnitude here live on this channel. So yeah. Anyway, how many more do we have? You see the small package. Obviously, we have already built quite some error list of, yeah, but that's too much. 60 packages actually in a couple of minutes. So much to the small stuff. Netkit base of RPC of, yeah, whatever. Who needs Netkit base anyway? But yeah, the remaining stuff compiles relatively fast, but it's, anyway, that's it probably for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, recommend to friends and family to motivate me to work on the stuff that I find are quite obvious. If Zstd is a more, you wonder why nobody else is doing this, but also code review wise, recurring theme that, in my opinion, this should be better structured in terms of not open coding this compressor stuff. There should be one, probably one streaming decompressor setup, and all the cases of BetterFS, init.rd, maybe not kernel because it's pre-init code stuff, but all the other cases of firmware and stuff. But honestly, even init.rd. But yeah, actually, long story short, we need to do our multi-server microkernel because, yeah. Anyway, what I mean with this is that Linux, that would be substandard firmware, that it's not the first location that this code is in there, and this fragile code of Zstd interfacing probably shouldn't be in squashfs, BetterFS, init.rd, firmware loadings like, yeah, YOLO, this is what code review. I wouldn't do it like this, one abstraction of that, and then use it everywhere without all the paging and mapping stuff, and yeah. But anyway, because it's not 1980 anymore. But that's it for today. Closing remarks. This is chunking along. So coming soon, P3 test booting this new ISO, also SGI Octane. ISO, bootable ISO coming next year to this channel. Actually, it's already online for you playing along at home. It's already committed, revision 50,000. But we certainly need to produce a special edition video and probably announce it. And then more MIPS and SGI stuff, and basically plenty of stuff, including self-reliance, off-grid stuff, solar cells, and DC aircons. Also, maybe it's not this year, maybe the aircon next year. But that's it for today, and I hope to see you soon for X videos and tinkering and vlogs and live streams to come.